Well, that New York Times headline getting a lot of attention tonight. Some on Mueller's team see their findings as more damaging for Trump than Barr revealed. According to government officials, the Times says, familiar with the Mueller team frustration. So let's bring in tonight's Legal Eagles, National Security Attorney Bradley Moss, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General John Yoo, and Fox News contributor Molly Hemingway. Welcome to all of you.
Great to be here.
Good evening.
Okay, so this is a little bit more that we get from that headline. It says some members of Mr. Mueller's team are concerned that because Mr. Barr created the first narrative of the special counsel's findings, Americans' views will have hardened before the investigation's conclusions become public. So apparently they're talking to the New York Times, Molly. Somebody is, and saying there's a lot of bad stuff in here for the president, but we're worried now that Barr's letter saying no collusion will taint what people think about the report.
Yeah, we're always told that the Mueller probe never leaks to anybody, but somehow we get information from people affiliated with the Mueller probe. In this case, the only thing that really matters is that there were no indictments, and that is already public, not just because Attorney General Barr told us, but we would know if that weren't true. We would know if there were indictments coming. There are no indictments coming. That is the most important thing for this probe that was about Russia collusion and obstruction. As for the idea of whether there might be damaging information in there, I assume that there would be, and I think that probably everybody who's reasonable is preparing for that very real probability. This was a probe that went on for 2 years, and you saw when they would issue indictments or when they would get guilty pleas, they would really write it up in a very dramatic style. They did not seem particularly friendly to the president, and in fact, it's not the job of a prosecutor to be friendly. So it would be unsurprising if it didn't have a lot of negative information.
In the meantime, folks over in Congress making a lot of noise about they want to see the whole unredacted thing. They know there are limits on what the AG can release by statute, by law. They know there are limits on him. It doesn't stop the PR side of this. Today they voted to authorize subpoenas. Here's what the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which of course is where they would launch impeachment, Jerry Nadler, here's what he had to say about whether he's willing to negotiate about how much of the Barr report comes out.
The committee must see everything, as was done in every prior instance. We're not willing to let the Attorney General, who after all is a political appointee of the President, make that substitute his judgment for ours.
But, John, you know, we highlighted on this show when it was President Bill Clinton and the Ken Starr report, Nadler was furious about the release of information. He wants it all now, though.
Look, it's just a publicity stunt. You don't subpoena a document before you give a chance to the person to give you the document. First, you get the Look, I was a Hill staffer on the Judiciary Committee, too. This is very irregular what they've done. Instead, you say, please give us the report. You look at the report, see if there are any redactions, and then you subpoena the stuff that you didn't get. The second point is it would be illegal for the Justice Department to hand over a report without scrubbing it. And then the third point is I actually think Nadler's making a mistake. If he really wants to check the president, hold oversight, even launch impeachment, he should do what they did in Iran-Contra. Call all the same witnesses that Mueller did. Ask them all the same questions. Why rely on Mueller at all? Bring them up before the American people, and let's see what the witnesses have to say instead of complaining about redactions.
Well, I mean, it's almost certain, I think we'd all agree, that this is going to flood into 2020, whether they do launch some court battles, we're fighting over subpoenas, or whatever else happens. Politico says this, their headline is, prepare yourself, the Mueller redaction wars are coming. They say Democrats are in a tough position. Pursuing their legal challenge at all costs could feed the Trump-approved narrative that they're overzealous, but giving up risks angering their own Trump-hating base. So, Bradley, how do they make that calculation going into 2020?
Well, I think we're almost jumping a little bit ahead of the whole thing because we don't yet know what will be released from the report, how much the Justice Department will actually give us without a fight. And I think that's why the chairman, why Mr. Nadler did this. He's using it as a sword of Damocles. He's holding it over the Attorney General going, look, we can go this route if you play games with us, if you try to be overzealous in executive privilege invocations, in classified information invocations. We don't necessarily want to go there, but we can do this and we can have this fight. So let's see what the Attorney General gives us. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Former Director James Comey's willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what we get first, and depending on how overzealous it is, then we're going to see just how nasty these political and legal wars are going to get.
Well, and there's this whole conversation about whether damaging derogatory information on the president should be released if he's not going to be facing any kind of indictment or legal trouble, because we all saw that then FBI Director James Comey got in trouble because he unloaded, to many people thought, a whole case against Hillary Clinton, but she wasn't actually going to have a chance to defend herself in court. So where do we go with that? Because people on the Hill are going to want to see everything. But
In general, that is a very good principle to uphold, that if you're not charging someone with a crime, you don't smear them. And that was what was so wrong with what James Comey did with Hillary Clinton. In this case, I think that we've had 2 years of just absolute, we've had a country basically being held hostage by a narrative that Russia had intervened and that Trump was an agent of Putin. I think that more transparency in this case is good. And it's important to remember that the Department of Justice in the last couple of years has obstructed when Congress has asked for, when they've subpoenaed things, when they've tried to get information. The Department of Justice and the FBI have been very reticent to hand over that information. And so when the Republicans controlled these committees, they were looking for information about how this investigation started, how it got spread around, how the Clinton campaign operation got fed through all the parts of the government, and they weren't getting good answers. So I think more transparency is good for all sides.
Yeah, and we'll see. The president keeps talking about potentially declassifying a lot of that information too, which I'm sure will spark all kinds of other debates that you could come back and we'll have.
Anytime.
Thank you all very much. John's on.